So you might be kind of a bit of a newer face to some folks, maybe down here in Central Georgia. Can you kind of talk about your background just a little bit and why you're running for governor?
Yeah, so my wife and I are small business owners in Middle Georgia. We own the Flying Biscuit downtown, so it's great to be back doing this interview during Cherry Blossom Festival. And we're small business owners throughout the state of Georgia. We own a Flying Biscuit in downtown Columbus, which is my hometown. And we also own an urgent care in Northwest Atlanta. I'm a school board member, former school board member from Atlanta, and was in the state Senate for several years. And my campaign is laser focused on the issues that matter the most, especially around health, wealth, and opportunity. That's what I've been talking to folks all across the state, because right now, with the rising cost of living, people are working harder than they've ever worked, and they're barely getting by. And we need leadership that is laser focused on lowering those costs, on ensuring that our communities are safer, and that our children have more opportunities than what we've had. And that's what my campaign is all about.
And so you kind of maybe set a little slogan there, health, wealth, and opportunity.
That's
what
right.
are some of those kind of top issues that you're wanting to tackle?
Yeah, well, look, no matter who you are, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whether you're agnostic to politics, you care about making sure that you have access to the health care that you and your family need. You also care about making sure that you have opportunities to good paying jobs or to owning your own small business so that you can keep and grow the money in your pockets. And then ultimately, our children. My wife and I have two children, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. So Georgians across the state want to make sure that our children and our grandchildren have more opportunities than what we've had. And that's the focus that I will have each and every day that I'm in the governor's office, making sure that we're expanding Medicaid, lowering the cost of private health insurance so that people can get the health care that they need, making sure that we are continuing to bring economic development projects to Georgia so they can get good paying jobs, have apprenticeship programs and a free technical college system so they can get trained for those jobs, and supporting those small business owners so we can build wealth, and then being the education governor, making sure that we make investments in childcare and in our K through 12 system so that ultimately we can restore hope in our young people and we can get them more opportunities than what we've had.
Now, Republicans have been in control of both the legislature and the governor's office for about 2 decades now. How would you kind of take that? How would your approach be different when it comes to things like, say, the budget?
Yeah, well, look, you can't be the #1 state to do business unless you have a workforce that's educated and healthy. And when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare, Georgia has consistently ranked near the bottom. That's where my budget will focus in on investing in community, investing in people. And that's where we've seen the problems that we have right here in Middle Georgia around poverty, around homelessness, around crime and public safety. A lot of that stems from the fact that Republican leaders down at the Capitol have not invested in our communities. I want to make sure that if you work hard in Middle Georgia, you should be able to afford to live in a home, in a safe community where your children have access to high quality public schools. That's the kind of vision that Georgians are looking for, and it's why so many Georgians are excited about my campaign, because I'm focused on giving people something to vote for, not just something to vote against. And that's going to be incredibly important, especially as we see the folks on the other side, Burt Jones and Rick Jackson, just attacking each other on what people should be voting against. I'm here to tell you that there's so much that Georgia has going for it that we can actually do more. We can be bold and invest in our communities and invest in our families.
We hear from our viewers a lot, and if you were just to walk down the street and ask literally anybody what's on their mind, they're going to tell you that things are way too expensive these days. What could you maybe do as governor to try and ease the cost of living for folks?
Yeah, well, look, the cost of living has continuously gone up. And one of the things we need to do is make sure we're putting money in people's pockets. One of the first things that I would look into doing is making sure that we take away the tax giveaways that are going to data centers and put that money in the pockets of hardworking people across the state. Right now, Connor, about $2 billion are going to data centers across the state of Georgia. I don't know about you, but in Trump's economy, there's so much more that taxpayers can be doing with the roughly $500 per taxpayer that costs versus giving that money to Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. I want that money to go into people's pockets, and that's one of the things that I would prioritize. I would also make sure that we tackle the cost of housing, because I know that in Middle Georgia we have a homelessness crisis. We have an affordability crisis around rent and around buying a new home. I want to make sure that we stop private equity funds, those corporate landlords, from buying up all of our single-family homes, but that we also build more affordable housing throughout the state of Georgia, especially the micro affordable housing, the emergency housing that helps people who are on the cusp of being homeless stay in a home with a roof over their head. All of those things are things that the governor should be tackling if the governor actually prioritized people over politics. And that's what I'm going to do each and every day that I'm in that office. I'm going to be focused on lowering the cost of living, on making life more affordable, and making sure that our communities are safe.
You just brought up data centers a minute ago, and I kind of wanted to ask you about that because down here we have some of these projects popping up, and some folks say, hey, we really need this money for our county. Others are saying, I don't want this thing anywhere near me. Where do you kind of fall in line with this kind of dilemma here?
Yeah, look, data centers should happen and be built with community. It shouldn't happen to communities. And too often across this state, data centers have been built in communities that didn't want them. There are communities that want them. And in the communities that want them, we just need to make sure that there are regulations in place. But what I will make sure we do as governor is I will make sure that we hold those data centers accountable to paying their fair share. Georgians should not be paying for the infrastructure, for the utility, for the power, for the water that goes into these data centers. That cost should be borne by the data centers themselves. So I'm going to make sure that they pay their fair share. I'm also going to make sure that they stop receiving state tax giveaways. That money should be redirected to the hardworking people of this state. We're not going to continue to give them $2 billion a year so that they can build up these massive developments. And then in the communities that want them, I want to make sure that those data centers are being built with the latest technology to limit the use of water and the use of power that they use. And if we are able to protect those communities, then I think that data centers should go in the communities that want them.
And you're a former teacher and a former school board member in the city of Atlanta. So how would education look different under your governorship?
Yeah, well, let me tell you, teaching middle school social studies is by far the most rewarding job I've ever had. It's also the hardest job I've ever had. So shout out to all the educators that are watching at home. Look, Georgia needs an education governor. When we think about what's happening in our communities, especially with youth violence, that stems from an education system that needs investment and that needs attention from the highest level of government in this state. And that's why as governor, I'm going to be that education governor. I'm going to start by focusing in on bringing universal childcare to the state of Georgia, investing in early learning because our babies need the building blocks that they need to be able to learn how to read, write, and do math. But then at the back end of the journey, I want to make sure that we're celebrating and supporting those who go straight into career, just like we celebrate those who go to Mercer or to Middle Georgia State University. I want to make sure that we're investing in apprenticeship programs and a free technical college system so that our children have hope for good paying jobs. And if anyone has hired an electrician or a carpenter or a plumber lately, they know that there are careers where you can make some really good money. But what we have to do as a state is make sure that we're giving our children opportunities to plan for those types of careers. And if we restore that hope, if we ensure that we're giving our children pathways to good paying jobs, and then we ensure that we have opportunities for after school programs and for summer jobs, then we can not only prepare those children for the future, we can start to lower the crime rate that we're seeing amongst our youth.
And final one on policy I have for you. Metro Atlanta and the coast are really just booming right now economically, but it seems like more our rural areas in our state are kind of being left behind. How can we kind of improve the economic conditions in our rural communities?
Yeah. Look, that's a leadership issue. That's an issue with the leaders of this state who have been Republican and supposedly represent rural Georgia, have been laser focused on the coast and parts of the coast and on Metro Atlanta. That's why we're seeing development go there. What I'll do as governor, as someone who's from Southwest Georgia, who's from Columbus, Georgia, I'm going to make sure that there is growth in Middle and South Georgia, and that we're trying to spread around the growth of good paying jobs. Georgians in Middle and South Georgia need opportunities. They want those opportunities. In addition to those good paying jobs, I also want to bring healthcare access to rural Georgia. Connor, we have about 100 out of 159 counties that are experiencing more deaths than they're seeing births. And that's because we don't have the healthcare access that people need. We don't have the access to good paying jobs, and then we don't have the educational opportunity that people need. So when you live in a state like we do, where you have $15 billion of our tax dollars sitting in a general fund, where you have another $2 billion sitting in a Georgia Lottery Reserve Fund, we have the resources and we certainly have the talent to tackle these issues. What we're missing is leadership, and I look forward to being that leader.
Now, the Democratic field is quite packed over there on the Democratic side for the primary, potentially even heading to a runoff with just how many folks are in this. How do you kind of get folks to maybe kind of look at you and say, okay, what sets you apart, I guess, is kind of what I'm asking.
Yeah, well, look, if people are tired of the same old politics, the politics that got us here in the first place, Connor, then they should be looking at my campaign. I am a leader that represents the new generation of leadership, one that is laser focused on delivering results for the hardworking people of the state. I'm tired of seeing people struggle more than they've ever struggled. Our young people, Gen Z, having fewer opportunities than their parents and their grandparents had. We have the resources and we have the talent to tackle our affordability crisis, to tackle public safety, to make sure that we're investing in things like mental health services. We have the resources, we have the talent. What we're missing is leadership. Now is the time, Connor, to be bold, which is why I'm asking people to join the team. Visit my website, jasonesteves.com. Follow me on social media. We're going all across the state on this health, wealth, and opportunity tour to make sure that people know more about who I am and what I'm about and why I'm going to be laser focused on the issues that people care most about.